Welcome everybody to our second Marketing Council workshop of the year. I am excited to see all of your faces up on the Zoom and hope that you are all doing well and hanging in there this winter. There is the end in sight and we are getting some more daylight hours coming up shortly here this weekend. So welcome, thank you for joining us. We've got a fantastic speaker. Lorraine Rinaldi is here to talk about how to basically tell your story. And she has a wealth of credit union experience and knowledge. So I'm really excited about today's workshop. I am going to read Lorraine's brief bio before I turn it over to her. But I'd also like to let you know that if you have not already done so, we have scheduled our April marketing session. That's going to be focused on compliance marketing. Kristen Tatlock is going to be addressing our marketing council on April 5th, and you can register for that workshop on our website. And we have workshops in the works for June and September. So we are busy with our planning here, and hopefully we'll have a fantastic variety of programming to continue throughout the rest of the year. So I'm going to read Lorraine's bio. Lorraine is a corporate communications professional and published author. She began her career behind the microphone, delivering news and traffic on Philadelphia broadcast outlets. She also has experience as a disc jockey, which I think is just so cool. The confluence of her passions contributed to her dedication to transforming the way corporations communicate. So Lorraine, please welcome to our Maine Marketing Council. As Lauren and I mentioned to you, we've got marketers from all across our state joining us today from a variety of sizes for credit unions. So thank you so much for joining us. We're glad to have you.
It's an honor and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen so that we can all see. Now, of course, as you know, because we're all Zoom experts, this means I can't see everybody at the same time. If what I'd like to do, but the title of my presentation, PR Lives, Telling Your Story from the Inside Out. If you don't already, I would ask you to have a notepad handy just for your own edification. Take some notes. To make it a little interactive, I'm going to ask you some questions throughout the presentation. We'll stop down and then maybe I'll give you some time to jot some notes and then ask you to share so that we can all get each other's feedback and ideas. And then I'm sure I'll leave some time at the end for questions and discussion. Sound good? So if you need to stop me down at any time during the presentation, raise your hand or open your mic and go ahead. That would be fine. Okay, cool. So let me begin by telling you that PR or public relations. Okay, now why isn't there we go. Is not dead. It is alive and well, and any reports of its death are grossly exaggerated. So public relations still lives. And as Jen said, my career spanning 3 decades began in entertainment, progressed toward journalism and public relations, transitioned into corporate communication and simultaneously consultant work. And now I do a bit of all 3, sprinkled with a variety of soft skills training and topped with a dollop of ghostwriting. And anytime I can use some kind of a food analogy, I will, because I'm Italian and we love food. So nothing like making a gross exaggeration there. So my focus during these next few minutes together are to kind of motivate you to look at everyone connected with your organization as a brand ambassador. Each ambassador has his own network. So the tentacles of your credit union really extend farther out than you may realize. We all have far-reaching networks if we really dig and just look into them a little more than we may normally do. So leveraging PR, public relations, from within your organization requires a commitment to maintaining excellent company culture, and this isn't always easy. It's a huge challenge, right? But we have to identify and empower employee influencers. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now is just consider, we'll take a beat and consider on a scale of 1 to 5, what is the level of your connectivity, of the connectivity of your organization's employees with the organization itself? How well are each of your employees connected to the brand? You might have an answer off the top of your head. You might need a minute to just think about that. So again, nobody's going to see this, jot it down or have it in your head just for your own reference. And then the next thing I want you to consider, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your organizational culture? Again, this is only for you to see. Nobody has to know.
In the rain, would 5 be?
5 would be the, 5 would be very good. That's the idea behind the smile face there. So 5 would be the highest, 1 would be the lowest. Somewhere in between is, All right, so with those 2 things in mind, let's just move forward and we'll reflect back on that. What if we could improve company culture through our efforts to empower brand ambassadors from within the organization? So while we can't create change, or we're not completely responsible for change, we can be, as marketers, the catalyst for change within the organization, which would affect the outside, the perception from outside the organization. And I see this all as one big revolving, circular equation. Culture, to the ambassadors, to the brand, it all relates back. Good brand creates good culture creates great brand ambassadors. And then that gives the positive impression that you want from outsiders looking in. But it all starts internally, and that's why I'm a huge fan of this inside out marketing concept. So before we unpack all that, let's define what the different types of media and the different types of attention we can bring to our organization. And I just have to kind of say, as an aside, when you talked about April's meeting being about compliance, my first thought was, oh boy, the compliance people, especially in the financial world and the credit union, they hate me because I run on the attitude that it's easier to apologize than ask permission. From a marketing perspective, but you do have to be in compliance. But I digress. Earned media is publicity that is gained through means other than paid advertising, as you all know, right? So it's free press. Free press today in our technology world of all kinds of technology and internet and e-marketing is a lot, looks a lot different, but it operates the same way as it did in the past. So take a second, we'll pause for a beat and consider any earned media that you recently acquired. How did your credit union benefit from it? And was it a concerted effort or did it happen organically? So think about that. Now I'm going to ask you, who can share with the group an example of that, and the impact that it had on your credit union? Does anybody have an example of recent earned media? Feel free to unmute. No one got any free press? All right. Well, I'm going to share.
I'm not going to put anyone on the spot, but this could be something as simple, not simple, but I've seen a lot of press releases from credit unions on scholarships lately, and some of the financial giving surrounding ending hunger, which is a big campaign that we do here in Maine. So if anyone's had any or in media success getting local placements, I know I've enjoyed reading the press releases. So you guys are definitely doing them.
And keep in mind, I'm going to jump ahead a little, that your free press doesn't necessarily mean that the local TV station came out to cover it. It could be that maybe they shared a tweet, or somebody else outside of your organization, from a media outlet or a huge influencer shared your information. Anybody experience any of that? I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because I'm going to give this example a little bit later, but I basically operate on a lot of free press myself, just by means of having a byline and things that I write about other people. But before I get too far ahead, another example, you mentioned scholarships, and that is a great way to get some press, because you're putting it out, in addition to sending a release out to different media outlets, you're obviously reaching out to the children to apply for the scholarship. So you're reaching all their schools, and sometimes the schools will share it, so that's subtle press for your credit union. Has anybody experienced that? that the schools are sharing the information on their public sites? I know the credit union that I was with for 5 years in PA, they had huge success with that. In fact, their whole mission was education and financial literacy. Of course, we don't say financial literacy anymore. What do we say? Financial wellness or something? I'm not really sure.
Financial education.
That's it, financial education. Thank you. But they made a huge concerted effort, spent a lot of money, donating, creating scholarships and creating opportunities for children in the high school going to college. And then they did a lot of work with college students too, just on, workplace preparedness, etiquette classes and whatnot. And that always garnered a lot of free press. And I was happy to be a part of that. And we did get traditional press. We got written up in newspapers. We got some TV coverage in the Philadelphia market, which is very competitive to try to, get any attention in. And what was neat was when it was time to go, outside of our service area and get some national press, we were able to in the trade magazines as well. So, but I'm going back a few years and I don't have those examples at my fingertips to show you, but it was Franklin Mint Federal Credit Union. And we did, they do great work there and they did a fantastic job promoting others, which actually gave them some promotion as well. So let's define earned media. Well, we did that, but let's look at traditional ways that companies would try to garner some free press, some earned media. The distribution of press releases, usually things about internal promotions, new acquisitions, some charitable giving, and those still work, but they're very much promoting, hey, here's what we're doing. If the release had a good hook or it reached an editor's desk during a slow news period, then, sometimes a reporter would be assigned to cover that, as you probably are aware. Or perhaps the news writers would take the release, edit it a bit, and just put it out. I've seen that happen a lot. Just simply because they have a short staff and if they need content, but there's so much competition now for content, especially in a traditional print paper or magazine, because of the ads and whatnot. The editorial content is shrinking. So either way, the company earns some media coverage, but the method of acquiring earned media has not changed. The channels have somewhat, right? So our channels of communication are a little different. Now we are adapting to these new channels and, very readily, we're all on social media. Hopefully you have a blog page or some kind of news page on your website. And in addition to just sending out releases to traditional news outlets, we're posting them on our own websites, our own social pages. We're creating our own media organization within the organization. And, we call that owned media, right? So there is a little bit of a challenge with owned media and putting out information. And I want to share my screen just to show you what it looks like when we have information overload, right? We're all familiar with this. So just as in the days of old, there is room for improving our content engagement. And because of the way the electronic media works, we have a lot of room for engagement and interaction with our end users. So we want to avoid the temptation to create content just for the sake of creating content. More is not always better. In fact, over messaging without regard for our audience, could be a turnoff. So everything always comes back to the audience, and I like to say that the most engaging content not only relates to the audience, but offers them something. It has a giveaway. And the one thing you need to keep in mind is that everybody's tuned to the same radio station. Believe it or not, everywhere in the world, we're all tuned to WIIFM. What's in it for me? You may have heard this before. It's like a Dale Carnegie classic. If you want your target audience to spend some time on your website, to interact with your social media pages, to maybe interact with your frontline staff if you have branches, then you need to offer them a little something. Give them some novel advice, some tip, about finances. Not only, hey, we have a new loan, but did you know that if you purchase this type of car now, the government will give you X amount of dollars or whatever it is, whatever, hey, do you know that the interest rates are going up, and these seem like obvious things, but people who have information overload, they're not usually as in tune as we may be to these little nuances going on in the financial market. So there's so much information that you can share. And you know what? I've seen credit unions, I've seen other organizations do this too. And I've done this experiment on my own social media pages. If I can post something very serious, get a little bit of interaction. As soon as I post something about food, my social it blows up. All kinds of likes, comments, and food is wonderful. Why is that? I'm sure there's a whole psychology, but we can basically see that it's because it's a basic need and it's something we can all relate to, right? So even if your tips every now and then are a recipe or something about food, something that will engage your audience, but your audience better than anybody. So the important thing is that any of your content that you throw out there, anything that you want to give to your audience is, comes from a place of authenticity. Being authentic is the best way to connect with any audience. And you want to connect emotionally, right? To differentiate your content from the flood of information that is barreling toward them at like lightning speed. And the other thing to always remember is it's the huge secret in public relations that we can easily forget, even if you've been involved in it for years. And I know I've been there, where you're messaging, and you need to get certain things out. You need to try to get build up this program or that promotion. We can't forget that we're not the star, right? Our organization isn't the star of the story. The star of the story is the audience. And that always has to be front of mind. And I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but just trying to remind you that not only we're not the star, we're not the supporting actor, we're just an extra, a prop, a backdrop, right? So anything that we do in the realm of marketing and public relations should complement any of the advertising that we're doing. So any of the paid things that we're already doing. Complement it, not mimic it. If you're paying for an ad about a new loan or something going out, you're buying ad space somewhere, then, your PR should maybe reference it, but from a different perspective. Maybe there's a case study. There's a story of Jane Smith who got an auto loan or got a mortgage when she never thought she could qualify. This is a cheap plug right here, as you can see. But the important thing is that you're pushing out stories about tangential aspects of your organization. Your members, they're the highlight. The focus, the spotlight is on somebody else other than just your organization. I think of it a lot of times, and I think women can relate to this. If you ever walk through a department store, through the cosmetic area, the perfume area, and the ladies are standing there ready to spray you, I get freaked out. No, don't put that on me. Like, they're not going to, but I just like, please wait, find out first if I want that, or, and we need to do the same thing. We don't need to just throw our information at people. We have to listen a lot more, find out what they want and how we can appeal to them, just like any sale, right? What is the need that we're trying to fulfill? So think about your organization. What are your subject matter experts up to? Can they lend their expertise to a blogger or a podcaster? It requires a little more work than before. What are people doing that, that may have some value somewhere in this, crazy media landscape that we have. We have bloggers, we have podcasts, there's thousands of them, right? How do I get my subject matter expert on Joe Rogan, who's got the biggest podcast in the world? Maybe it's not going to be him, but maybe somebody else. Do I start a podcast? And if I do, how do I make it interesting? It's tough. It's tough to get followers. It's tough to get listeners. We're competing with people's time, attention, just like ever before, but with many more channels. Who am I going to rank?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
How would that work? Some of our smaller credit unions, would you advise? And, if it's not a podcast, if they leverage their newsletters, like, we're still doing newsletters, we're still doing websites, would you recommend perhaps having a blog section or a specific tip section in a monthly newsletter if they're not already doing that? Is that a good way to kind of amplify that so that it's hitting their members and getting the messaging kind of through that echo chamber?
Absolutely. And you can do it on like zero budget. And here's what I recommend. So if you're doing something in a newsletter where you're offering tips, what if make somebody in your organization a star? Again, it could be a subject matter expert, it could be your CEO, somebody that people don't see. You may have somebody, believe it or not, with a huge ego in your organization would be happy to get in front of a camera. I say that tongue in cheek, but you know what, get your phone out. This is a beautiful thing we all have at our disposal. We all have the tools that we need, and we don't have to spend a lot of money. Now granted, it's not going to be the same quality, but 30-second video, you put it on YouTube. Create a YouTube channel if you don't have one. 30 seconds, and here's 30 seconds with Joe Smith, the president of ABC Credit Union. Joe's here to tell us, why blah, blah, blah. And in 30 seconds or less, Joe tells it. It's on your YouTube channel. You're sharing it in your newsletter with a direct link, assuming it's an e-newsletter, or if it's paper newsletter, you're advising people to go there. You're sharing it on your social media pages. And you should be on LinkedIn. Facebook is, believe it or not, still the number one. Twitter, I don't know. Everybody has their different opinions. The good thing about Twitter is all your media outlets are on Twitter. So you need to be on there for that. Tag them in anything that you post. Maybe they'll pick it up. I know that a lot of people love Instagram. I still find it annoying because you always have to have a picture or a video, but that's what people are interested in, those quick hits. So yes, I do think that any of those things help. And then if you don't have a blog page on your website, see if your web developer, whoever you use, can at least put your running social on, on the side, on the bottom as a sidebar. So every time you post, it updates on there. Usually you can do that with Twitter, and I think with Facebook posts. I'm not sure about with LinkedIn. And I can't get too much more into it because I'm not techie. So I'm sorry about that, but the tech people know what I'm talking about. Maybe some of you do if you create websites. Yeah, that's always helpful. And then the other thing to promote too, so that's from within your organization. Who are your SMEs, your subject matter experts, but what about your members? And I'm sure you do this to an extent. Who among your membership has done something great? Maybe maybe you have a little league team that, does their banking with you, or I'd like to say their credit unioning with you. But promote them, just put them in the spotlight. You're going to get the publicity just because you'll have the byline, or, you're the backdrop, you're the prop, you're the catalyst behind that. And then your vendors, look at your vendors and your partner organizations. Did they do anything spectacular that needs a little push? Promote it on your own social pages. You don't have to necessarily reach out to the media for that. But just keep in mind, the media is bare bones more than ever. It was bare bones when I started getting involved in the 80s, and it has just gotten more and more bare bones. They don't have a budget. It's a lot of pay to play out there, which you're probably familiar. Oh yeah, you can have an article if you pay for it to get into our, magazine or our newspaper or whatever. Even the local newspapers do that. And I would say that, when you're looking at your budgets, you have to determine whether it's worth it to pay to play. Or if you say, no, thank you, I'll just try to go organic, that's fine too. There are plenty of organic ways, in my opinion. There's just so many ways to get publicity. If it's quality stuff, you want to always give, quality content to people. Avoid centralizing the source of all your company content. This is probably going to make some of you, like, your eyes go up in your head. I'm going to ask you to look outside of your marketing or HR departments for content and content curation. There could be somebody in IT that would love to write or love to get involved. I'm not saying make them part of your marketing team, but tap into them. Tap into, the loan department, whatever the other departments you have in your organization. Maybe there is that someone that has a unique perspective, or maybe they have a story of dealing with a member that you can use, and identify the influencers within your organization. So who's already very involved personally on social media, and how can you leverage their network, their big network? Consider a byline effect. And this is what I was referencing earlier. So I took this a screenshot from CU Insight's website. I don't know if you guys read CU Insight or if you subscribe. It's all online. When they started this magazine a few years ago, they had reached out to a bunch of credit unions asking for people to write. I got a call about 20, was recently hired at Franklin Mint. It had to be late 2014, maybe 2015. And they asked me if I would be interested in contributing. They were looking for content curators. Again, here's another news organization, doesn't have maybe the budget to hire a staff of reporters. And trust me, that is your local news. They don't have the budgets. So they were looking for content. So I said, oh yeah, definitely. I was in a position where I was to sell this children's program that we created at Franklin Mint. And my boss said, why are you going to spend time writing for them every month? I said, I'm going to write about marketing and communications issues. And every now and then I'll throw in a little promo about our program. And so every now and then that promo about our program got some free press. But more than that, because my name was on the byline and used to say Franklin Mint Federal Credit Union in my title, they got a slight promotion, so we were getting Franklin Mint out there. And then in my bio, there was a link to the website. When I left the credit union in 2018, I continued to write for CU Insight. They have so many contributors now. Over the last year, they've taken us from a month to a quarterly contribution. So I'm happy to contribute quarterly, and it's always usually marketing related, sometimes leadership, sometimes I promote some clients. Always, though, giving something to the reader. I can't say I'm perfect at it, but I try really hard to create something engaging that people in any field can relate to, because I write a lot and I try to do twofers. So if it's good for the credit union insight page, maybe it's also good for another field, because anything in marketing is transferable to obviously other fields. We just might do it a little differently in the credit union world. So that's gone a long way. And I'll tell you another quick story about this, and I'll stop sharing so I don't have to look at my byline for too long. Because of an article that I had written, oh gosh, easily 2 years ago. What are we in 2022? It was late 2019, actually. The guy that runs the credit union organization for the Dakotas reached out and said, hey, I saw your article. It was really good. He shot me an email. He I forget even which one it was, but he said that really resonated with us. And I think I mentioned credit unions in it. He said, I'd love to have you come out next year and talk to our New Ideas Conference. Well, the next year was 2020. And as you know, everything was shut down. He kept in touch with me, and I got out to South Dakota last fall in October. And it was because, and I did this presentation and I helped them with their whole 3-day event. It was really cool. We did some out of the box stuff. We even did a cooking demo, because I said I bring food everywhere, right? And so it was because of that somebody from the organization contacted Jen and Lauren, and they reached out to me, and that's why I'm here today. So you don't know the long-term effects of your byline of, promoting the Little League or something else outside of the typical things. Like, you do some paid advertising, you have to, and I think that's very important, and media buying is an art of itself. But I'm always in the PR world, and what I see a lot of, and I've seen a lot in different organizations, is that they tend to think, oh no, we want to pay for our advertising and see the immediate return. And if they don't see, the return on that investment, they'll put their dollars elsewhere. What I like to tell people, because this is where I get challenged the most about PR, what's the return on investment? And I say, you know what? You have to have faith. You have to keep at it. You always have to include PR as part of your marketing strategy, because it's long term. You may not see those results immediately. And in our world, in our society, we've all kind of been very much, wired toward this instant gratification. You want to see some instant return. PR doesn't work that way. So I didn't know when I started writing in 2015 or so for CU Insight that I would still be doing it, 7 years later, and I love it. And they're great. I hope they don't take me off their roster. So to stay on, I got to make sure that I always give them something that they want for their readers. But I'm always conscious of giving, marketing advice or just some communication tips or something that I experienced. Anyway, I think my point's been made. So let me ask you another question. We'll stop down and just kind of think about this. Who among us contributes regularly or has a colleague in your credit union that contributes regularly to a trade or a local magazine? And then if you want to share, please do. Does anybody here on this call write regularly for any kind of trade magazine newsletter outside of your organization that somebody else produces?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Lorraine. There's a newspaper called Mjambo Africa. It's for the New Mainer and immigrant community, and Maine Credit Union contributes a monthly financial literacy article. So just all about helping new Mainers and immigrants prosper within the U.S. financial system and better adapt to how money works in our country. So yeah, we contribute to that each month.
That's awesome. And what have the responses been? Have you gotten anything like unexpected response, like new members because of it, or somebody reach out and said, hey, I saw that article or I saw that information? And
They're just so incredibly grateful for the information. It really makes me feel good about a hard day's work writing those articles and getting them out there, because they couldn't be happier that we're doing what we can to help them succeed here. So it's very rewarding, and I think there's a lot of payoff, and they're very appreciative.
so you're giving them something that doesn't cost you anything. You're sharing knowledge, right? And you're creating long-term loyalty, right? You hope, to some extent. So, and that's the idea. And, and this is, we're so data driven and we like to measure everything. It's really hard, always has been, always will be hard to measure PR. But again, I argue just because of that reason that Jake just shared, you can't let it go. You can't not do it. And then some of the other feedback that I get a lot is, oh, well, it's time consuming. Yeah, it is. It is. But you know what? It pays for itself over the long run. And you just have to have that faith and you have to keep at it. And I'll tell you what, the first department, I don't have to tell any of you, that gets cut when things get tight, and we're about to see that with, the economy, is the marketing department. And we all know that's the last place you want to cut, because when the dust settles in a bad economy, you want to always have been top of mind. And this is one way that you can remain top of mind, and it costs very little. You have to pay an employee, and the employee has to be able to roll up their sleeves and see, okay, where do I have stories? How can, what's positive that I can promote? Who can I promote? How do I help others, with some information, whether it's through a short video or a short article, or maybe a longer article, or contribution somewhere to some content, because people are always looking for knowledge. Any other examples?
I've got one that we can share. It's in the works. Kind of keeping on that theme, we are working with the Good Shepherd Food Bank, which is the largest food distributor here in Maine to serve our underserved communities. And we're going to be piloting a program with them to share basically a pamphlet at some local community food pantries on financial education. We've heard from the food bank that a lot of folks that are visiting the food pantries, they don't have a banking account at a credit union or at a bank. So we're just doing some basic financial education to them about the benefits of being banked, and in the hopes that maybe once they're able to, they'll take their business maybe to a credit union. It might be a longer term, like you just mentioned, it's not going to be instantaneous results, but hopefully those folks will learn something about credit unions and our industry and keep us in mind. And it's also just the right thing to do to help these people.
Right. So it's the credit union philosophy at work there, people helping people, right? And, maybe somebody in a main, a large news organization will pick that up. At the very least, it's something that you should share with CU Insight, CU Times, all these Credit Union Journal, all the trade magazines. Because they're always looking for that kind of information. And most of the information those trade magazines get is from people like you that, you're writing the content for them. They don't have huge staffs, right? So just something to keep in mind. And some of the other things that we want to consider, acknowledge and encourage employees to use social media responsibly. I know that a lot of times it's, we're a little reluctant, especially because of all the regulations and compliance, in a financial institution, maybe reluctant to encourage social media. But I say run into it, don't run away from it. As long as you have a social media policy in place and your employees are using it responsibly, because they, if you have that good culture and if they're sold on the brand and if they love coming to work, then they'll be responsible on their social media. And those are the ambassadors that you want. And usually a lot of our employees have very huge networks. Not all employees are on social media. or very public about their lives, right? Some people tell you everything they've done in the day, everything they've eaten and whatnot, but some just are old school, and it doesn't matter how old they are. Even some young people don't really like social media, but their influence is still powerful, and it's powerful in an even more direct way. So I put up here a picture, and unless you're as old or older than me, you may not know what this is, but this is the best screenshot I could get from a 1970s commercial for Breck shampoo. If you remember this, then you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there was a shampoo called Breck, and their commercials were all about, the best form of advertising, and that's word of mouth. So the idea was, and again, think about the 70s, with not quite the technology, in TV and special effects that we have now, of course. So they started with one woman talking about, how wonderful the shampoo is, and she said, and you'll like it, and you'll tell two people. Then her image on the screen would double, and then she'd say, and then they'll tell two people, and it would double again, and they'll tell two people, it would double again, and then she'd say, and so on and so on and so on, until the screen looked like this, and they just kept multiplying. They were demonstrating the effect of word of mouth advertising. They did a great job demonstrating it. For marketing purposes, I don't know how well they sold their Breck shampoo, but it was one of the biggest ones in the 70s. So I dated myself. There you go. But the Breck effect, what I call, some people call it the Jesus effect, and kind of the same thing. That word of mouth advertising is always good. It's never gone bad. So even if you have employees, brand ambassadors who are not very active in social media, don't have a huge electronic network, they probably have a huge network, and their word of mouth is important. These are the people that you want to give your tchotchkes to, right? If you create any kind of tchotchkes with your brand on it, with your logo or whatnot, look in your organization. Who's in the front line? Who's the loan officer that's out there every day meeting with other business people? Do you have a really good tchotchke? Something that, I know they're expensive, but if you have something that's good and useful, could be simple as the lens cloth, we all use them for our phones, for our glasses, or, our computer screens or whatnot, and they're pretty inexpensive. Give a few dozen to somebody that's out there networking all the time, and let them hand those out. That's just one way. But the other way too is just to arm them with the knowledge and let them know that you appreciate their advocacy on behalf of the organization. So I would love it if somebody could share with us the story of an excellent word of mouth campaign. Have you had any experience or an example of, intentional or kind of organic, not intentional, where you had a word of mouth campaign that just went viral unexpectedly? Have you even considered that? No, everybody's quiet today. Jen, you have
No,
another one?
we have a quiet group today, and I'm
Okay.
surprised.
I'm kind of hitting you up with questions you may not have thought about, and we're going to get off the call, and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, yeah, last year this happened. I can't believe I didn't remember that, but it does happen all the time, and sometimes we don't realize it. But what I'm asking you to do is kind of pay more attention to that, or have these conversations as the marketers. And I know we're busy, and I'm putting more on your day, but if you let your frontline staff or those people that are out and about the most know that, you're interested in their stories. What are you saying to people out there when you tell them, where you work? Maybe create for each of your employees a nice elevator pitch in case they have trouble creating that on their own. Do they go out to Rotary meetings and other networking? I don't know how involved you are with the different chambers of commerce. We all have them locally in our communities. But all those little things are so important for your word of mouth advertising. So I throw that out there. And we're wrapping toward the end here. I just want to remind you too, back to the internet and our electronic communication, because that is our primary communication. And I want to remind you that what happens in Vegas makes its way around the internet in record time. So it doesn't stay in Vegas anymore. So the line between internal and external communication, and this is where I'm going, is invisible. there, we used to have in larger companies, and I know in our smaller organizations, especially financial institutions, we don't generally have internal and external communication. But even though all that communication, it comes from one department, there used to be the line between, what happens internally, what happens externally. That line has vanished, in my opinion, with electronic communication over the past couple of decades, certainly in the last 10 years with social media, which is actually more than 10 years, almost. Well, I guess say 2004 was when Facebook emerged. 2008 was when it got real popular. So you do the math. But, again, back to company rules on employee use of social media. If they're cumbersome rules and regulations around use, it might create a hostile environment. So it might counteract that culture that I mentioned earlier. And we want to create a positive culture. We want everybody to feel good. So I would run into it instead of running away from it. Just a quick story. I worked not in a credit union, but I worked with a telecom company for a short while on their communication. And I said, we need to use all these people that are on social media as our brand ambassadors. So the core of the company, the headquarters was outside of Philadelphia, but because they did telecom, they had construction crews all over the country and in Canada, little crews, the guys that climb the poles, and fix things and whatnot. So they were largely on their phones. They were never at a desk or a computer. Some of them didn't even have email with the company. And I said to the CEO who I worked for, I said, we should encourage them. And he said, no, I want to tell them exactly how they should use social media, and, that they can't do this, they can't do that. And I want you to write exactly what their profiles should look like. And I looked at him, I said, well, that's not right. That's not our place. That's a personal thing. If they're not posting as the company, if they're posting as themselves. He picked up an envelope. And I'm looking around to see if I have one. I don't, not in front of me, but he picked up an envelope and he shook it at me and he said, if I'm giving them this every Friday, they'll do what I say. And he was referring to the paycheck. And I thought, oh my gosh, you're going to create the most hostile work environment. This is so counterculture. It's just not what we want. I think most people are good. I think people will make mistakes. I think that you do have to be careful. There is a huge compliance issue around social media, but don't run away from it like that guy. Run into it and create the kind of culture where, people will be happy and there will be, they will have the interest in posting, something good for the benefit of all, because they're part of that, right? So if you establish guidelines or some kind of a social media policy that's fair, and employees feel they don't feel like they're being micromanaged or insulted with a rigid policy, then they're more apt to post, be that ambassador that you want for your brand. Doing the opposite, like this man, like that example I gave you, could backfire for your organization. So, and you want them to have trust. And in order for your employees to have trust and to build that positive culture, you need to show them that you trust them to do the right thing as well. And most people will live up to the expectation. So I say, set the bar high and expect people to rise to it. And if they don't, then you deal with that in reviews and whatnot. And that's where HR and marketing work hand in hand, right? Because everything that happens inside that house, your company, is going to be exposed outwardly, even if it's just an attitude. So even if an employee has a bad attitude, they know they can't post something on social because that would be like suicide for their career. They at least, they still may not have the right presence one-on-one with people. So, it's a huge job, but I think as marketers, we have the ability to be the catalyst for the positive change, for the positive culture, which is going to lead to great brand ambassadors that's going to promote our brand to the hilt. So what else? So I did mention that my approach doesn't come without risks, but you can mitigate your risks by taking the cultural fit into consideration during the hiring process, advancing leaders who are congenial and empathetic. They're going to set the tone in the corporation, in the organization for the rest of the crew. Make concerted efforts to create an amiable culture, open door policy, one where there's a lot of sharing and trust, and know that employees who feel trusted, respected, and appreciated will overperform. When your employee influencers are empowered, they feel valued. They feel compelled to live up to expectations because they don't want to let the team down. And they're motivated, and they know that, the rising tide lifts all boats. So again, I say, it's one big circular kind of approach. Leverage your PR from within your organization, energize your internal stakeholders, reach a larger audience, establish and maintain that positive reputation. And remember that nothing is secret. Anything that goes on in your organization is going to be all over the internet. Your company culture is your brand, and it's represented by the collective personalities of your people and established by those people who are at the top of your organization. Emotions, we all know emoticons. Emotion is the glue that makes any marketing tactic stick. Your brand can attach itself to any number of stories. Choose the ones that have the emotional impact and don't vie for the spotlight, because you are the catalyst and you want to shine the spotlight on others, and then you will get the due promotion and publicity that you deserve for doing so. So I want to thank you for the time and your attention and your participation today. It looks like we have about 10 minutes left for questions. And before I take the first question, let me just throw one thing out to you. Imagine you posted something on social media, and I'm sure this has happened to you. You posted something on your organization's page, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever. Maybe it was something about a new promotion or a program that you have going on. And a member posted a negative reply or a negative comment, a response to your post. Something that might have been a little disparaging, okay? But not quite enough that it's obvious that that person's a wacko, more that you thought, oh boy, this may not make my organization look so good. How did you handle it? Or how would you handle it if that happens to you? I'd love to know what you think.
I know it's better to come up with a solution than it is just to delete the comment. Usually try to work through it with a member, offer solutions, try to resolve it. It's a bit better looking on you as an organization if you address the problem than push it to the side.
I agree 100%. And have you experienced that? You started by saying, Jake, I know it's better to do that. I thought there was going to be a but in there.
Yes, no, I monitor and run the Maine Credit Union social media. So whenever a comment comes in, absolutely try to address it and offer solutions and help in any way that I can. It does not look good on us if we're just leaving things there unanswered or even deleting things, right? It's just not the way to go.
I agree 100%. I know a marketing organization with a credit union that would delete negative comments. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's the worst thing you could do, because somebody's already taken that screenshot somewhere. Then they can prove that you deleted it. Then you look guilty as anything, most people don't like negative people. Like even the most negative people don't like negative people. We tend to see that and think, oh, that's a bad look. So anybody that posts something that disparaging, they already look bad. So you can only look good if you say, hey, sorry you had that experience. Here's something that can help. Did you know? And you can do it in the nicest, friendliest way, and you look so much better. So I agree 100% with everything Jake said. Anybody have an experience they want to share or offer? At this point, let's open it up to questions. Who has the first question? If you don't want to comment on that.
I'll just mention we updated our mobile app at the beginning of December, and of course with that comes all kinds of the things are not working and we're not logged in and we can't log in. And so some of our posts had some negative comments. I would say not many. So we were very lucky. But the ones that we did, obviously we didn't want to talk about personal their personal information in a comment.
Right.
So, we were very quick to say, we'll send you a personal message to get this rectified. We're sorry, you're experiencing this. And then, like you said, like one negative comment, it didn't breed more negative comments. It was actually people commenting and saying, oh, I logged in and I love the new look. And it just kind of snowballed from there with positivity. So it was really, it felt good for us who was going through the transition, and I could share that with a team that was dealing with all the members' questions, saying, just so you know, you might be hearing some negative comments like on the phone and stuff, but the social media part's all good. Everybody's, you know, the positivity was surprising, and it felt good for our staff who was going through that. So
Did you find that some members were trying to help the members who wrote, hey, I can't log in, and that kind of?
yeah, it wasn't just, you know, us answering the questions. It was other
Right.
members saying, well, if you try this, this is what worked for me. And so
Right.
they were kind of training each other, which kind of, you know, was really nice to see. So that, I mean, for the most part, we don't really get the negative comments. So that was just one example what recent we had to deal with.
Yeah, and I think a couple of things there. First of all these opportunities, negative, positive, whatever the comments, they're great opportunities for engagement. Because for everybody who doesn't engage, you know, make a comment, good, bad, or indifferent, there are probably 10, you know, for everybody who does make a comment, there are 10 people who are just reading it and would never comment no matter what, right?
Absolutely.
So these are great opportunities for you to further pitch your brand and sell your, you know, whatever it is you're selling, right?
Absolutely.
The other thing I was going to say there is, oh, and I forget what I was going to say. Darn, I love it. And this is being recorded. But yeah, so take advantage of all those opportunities, and you know, there are also opportunities to, you know, those, like you suggested, that sometimes the people working on this on the inside, especially when you have a big change like that, new app, new core system, or whatever it is, your employees can feel overwhelmed, and they can feel the impact of any negativity, you know, one person complaining. So to
Oh,
constantly
for sure. And it
remind-
was, several days of,
yes,
you know, a week. And of course, that team, you know, they were dealing with people's problems all day long. So it was nice to be able to share, just so you know, these, and I would, you know, screenshot them and send them to the team and say, look, you know, look what people are saying. We realize you're hearing the negative part, but there are positive things happening, you know, out there,
Right.
and people are sharing it.
yeah, and that's just it, because you need to boost their morale too, because they're on the
Absolutely.
front line dealing with all of it. So good stuff. Any other comments or a question?
I've got a question for you, actually. Obviously, you mentioned that communication channels are changing. You know, we have social media now. Have you found anything that might be an older way of communicating with members, or just older tactics that people are still doing that they should avoid and put more energy into the newer or evolving methods?
I can't say that anything comes to mind. I really don't know what I don't know, but I can tell you an older method that people don't do that might be novel in some cases, and that would be an old-fashioned mailer. I don't know if you're doing mailers and they haven't worked for you, but something different that, you know, now I got one yesterday, not from a credit union. I thought it was a check. You know, when you get a check from the government and it's just sealed and you have to fold it on the perforation, rip it, and it was an ad. And I'm like, oh, really? I thought, oh, I'm getting a check from somebody. It was, I forget who it was from, and that's how much it stuck. But I was annoyed, so I wouldn't do that. But just a simple a postcard, those, you don't get those as much anymore in the physical mail. And the other thing that I always think is huge, that never goes out of style, is a handwritten note. Now, obviously, you can't write a handwritten note to, you know, tens of thousands or even 1,000 members, but in certain areas it might be important, you know, maybe for your business development teams or whatnot. I think that personal touch never goes out of style. Things that people are doing that they may be wasting their time on, I'm not sure. Video is still just huge, but quick snips, you know, pictures are huge. Pictures always tell 1,000 stories, and that's why Instagram's so loved. I'm not on TikTok. I know a lot of people use it. I don't know how that works for your credit unions, if anybody does TikTok videos, but you know, I think if you're going to create a short video and you can post it to as many different sites as possible, then great, you know.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I've got one quick question. I know we're wrapping up close to one, but you have experience with radio, and I kind of think sometimes that's the forgotten gem when you're doing something, not a loan promotion, but if you're doing something for the community, do you think folks should kind of reach out to their local radio stations to see if they have those opportunities to pitch that they're hosting something for Special Olympics or for a local
100%.
documentary?
100% radio, and that's podcast. I look at podcasts like radio because it's a one-on-one communication. And yeah, 100% local radio is the quickest way to get, other than social media was always the quickest way to get things out to broadcast to a large group in the community because it's very local. TV requires a lot of production with cameras and lights and makeup and all that, where radio doesn't. So yeah, if there's like a local talk show or a local, special weekend program, a lot of them still do programming. Unfortunately, a lot of are, bring in national shows. But if you have stations in your vicinity that, cover the local high school games and stuff, that's fabulous. Yes, get involved any way you can. I think it's important.
Awesome. Any last minute questions before we wrap for today?
I will be happy to hang out until the very last person drops off if you want to chat, and you can reach me at LorraineRinaldi.com. Lorraine@LorraineRinaldi.com is my email, and I'm happy to always talk and, discuss some ideas. So I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thanks for joining. And I've recorded today's session. I'll get that posted too. So thank you all. You take care and appreciate your time today. And of course to Lorraine, thank you.
Thank you.